College football games have come a very long way since the early and mid 1990s. Back then, you just had pro football, and then you had a few college football games that came out that were really more of simulations. They didn't have all the teams, they didn't have all the plays, and you couldn't do any recruiting. In the early years, EA's college football games were endorsed by Bill Walsh. It was a similar idea to how the company had branded the NFL games with John Madden. In the 1980s and 1990s, this was typical of other marketing approaches to sports games. You find a big name, attach it to your sports game, and just kind of hope for the best. Bill Walsh would lend his name to the first two games in EA's college football series. These were released in 1993 and 1994. Then the series would pivot to being named College Football USA for 2 years. This was after Bill Walsh had retired. Finally, it would change its name to NCAA Football, going forward until 2014, when it was discontinued for about a decade. When it did eventually come back in 2024, its name reverted to college football and then the year of its release. I'm glad that it came back and that the players are earning some money from it. It gives me a little hope that maybe EA will figure out a way to get college basketball back. That would be a nice thing to see, even though I don't have any evidence to support it. Previously, I have looked at Sega's football games, both their professional and their college football games. These were branded, specifically the professional ones, with Joe Montana and then eventually Deion Sanders for a year. Several other sports games from various companies have employed this strategy. You can find basketball, hockey, baseball, soccer, golf. There are so many of them that I kind of lost count, and finding an actual list of all of these games has been quite the challenge. When I was trying to compile a list of all these different games, I came across 51, and then I realized that I completely left out an entire sport. I didn't have any soccer games on the list, and just looking at my collection, I probably could bump this up to about 60. There are so many of these damn games, and I don't have all of them by a long stretch of the means. There's some weird ones on here too that I just wouldn't really have expected. I had no idea that Doug Flutie had a football game. I kind of knew that Mike Ditka had one. I had completely forgotten about Walter Payton having one. Forgot all about, some of the different baseball games that had existed over the years. Then I remembered boxing's also a sport, so I had a whole bunch of those too. What I'm saying is there's just a ridiculous number of licensed deals for video games. And these are really just the home console. I haven't even gone into the computers. I'm generally frightened by how many that I would actually find, just because of how few I do have here, and how many more I know I would actually have uncovered if I really started looking. You would think that there would have been an actual list, like a complete list of all these games somewhere on the internet, and there might have been at some point, but I just wasn't able to find it. I had to cobble the one that I was looking at for this together from several different sources. At some point, I just had to give up. I didn't look at all of the different games that I could have, or all the different sports that I could have looked at, because there's quite a few out there that some athlete has lent their name to. Especially with soccer, where I just didn't get to that one before I threw in the towel and moved on. As long as there have been sports video games, there have been licensed video games. It was an easy way to promote the game. Most athletes and coaches didn't really care if the game was any good or not, because they were getting paid regardless. There have been a few lawsuits regarding these, not just the college basketball lawsuit in the late 2000s, but also Joe Montana suing Sega over not getting what he thought he should have gotten. That one was way more interesting, and unfortunately I couldn't find how that one ended. These games were released on just about every home console. and also on, computers as well. Anyway, let's get back to the Bill Walsh games and also the College Football USA games. For those of you that don't know, Bill Walsh was a coach on the collegiate and professional levels of football from 1960 until 1994. I remember him the most as the head coach of the San Francisco 49ers when Joe Montana was their quarterback, and I don't actually remember him being the coach of Stanford. I just wasn't paying that much attention. I was also pretty young at this time. There is a lot more to his coaching career, but I wanted to focus on the video games. 2 games have his name on it, but it looks like EA was aware that it wasn't going to last too long because they kind of shuffled his name around and changed the actual title of the games. So you can see from the first one, Bill Walsh is a major focus of it. On the second one, they kind of started moving it towards just college football and then the year. It was a little bit like how Sega started moving Joe Montana's name from being the feature part of the game to just a subtitle. It's just an interesting footnote in something like this. The first game in the series was Bill Walsh College Football. There was no year attached to the game, which isn't too surprising. The licensing for this game feels a little bit rushed, and it probably had a bigger story behind it than what I was able to find. The first game is based on the 1992 college football season. It features 24 teams. They're based on some of the more popular college football teams, but most of them aren't actually named in this. It's kind of an interesting quirk. Some of the colleges that you would recognize are just given city names or where the college is located. For example, Boston College is shortened to just Boston. College Station is supposed to be Texas A&M. Columbus is used for Ohio State. You have Provo, which is supposed to be BYU. Pullman, which is supposed to be Washington State. Raleigh is used for North Carolina. South Bend is used for Notre Dame. State College is Penn State. Tallahassee is supposed to be Florida State. Those are some of the major changes to it, and it kind of speaks to how EA was really scrambling to get all their licenses in a row. There are 3 game modes in this. You can play an exhibition game, or you can play, one of 2 16-team elimination playoffs. This is pretty much what you should expect from a football game around this time. Most of them didn't offer a full season, especially when it came to college football. And yeah, it's a pretty good game. Not the best, but it's pretty easy to play. There are some things that I don't like about it. Specifically how it uses this perspective. I'm not a fan of, the third-person perspective in any of these retro football games, but it does get the job done. For some reason, I like it more now than I did back then. I think a lot of it has to do with just the passing game in these games. The next game in the series was Bill Walsh College Football 95, which was based on the 1993 season of college football. Yeah, weird stuff like that happens with these games. It allows you to play a full season, which is awesome. I love it when that happens. And a fun fact about this game is it came with a POG, or Fun Cap, depending on where you are. So if you bought this game on the Sega Genesis, then you would have gotten an EA Sports branded POG. And no one would have played you for it because it's an EA Sports branded POG. Please feel free to use this information however you see fit. I'm going to sit here with the only POG that I own and go back to talking about the game. For this game, it feels like EA was able to resolve their licensing issues with the school names, so that's pretty cool. I'm glad that they were able to do that because it makes it just a lot easier when you pick this game up to figure out who you're trying to play as. They still don't have a full complement of all the college football teams at the time, which shouldn't really be a surprise because of how many college football teams were actually playing at the national championship level. This was a weird time where It was split up into divisions, and then Division 1 was even divided up. College football is weird, and I'm not even going to try to understand it. Alls I know is they don't have all the teams in here, but they do have a lot of some of the more popular ones. This game feels a lot better than the previous game. The graphics have been improved, and the controls feel a little bit easier. It wasn't as hard to pass the ball as it was in the previous game. Maybe that's because I actually understood what the hell was going on a bit more, but yeah, it felt a lot better than the previous one. Bill Walsh retired from coaching in 1994. This is cited as the reason for EA dropping Walsh's endorsement from the series. I haven't been able to find a source for that, and it seems a little strange that EA would do this for the college football games, but not for the Madden games. I'm guessing that Bill Walsh just didn't want to do it anymore. Maybe, I'm not really sure, or maybe they didn't have the same deal as Madden, where Madden was still in, the spotlight, and Bill Walsh was just going to not be an announcer or not do a lot of the other things that Madden was doing. I'm sure there's a greater story behind this. I wasn't able to actually find it, so I'm left with just EA saying he retired and we dropped the license, which feels a little crappy to end it on that note, but now we move into College Football USA. College Football USA 96 has a few things that only appear in this game. The first is the Southwest Conference, and the other is Pacific University. These two things don't appear in any other college football game, which makes this a little bit of a time capsule. The Southwest Conference existed from 1914 to 1996. It consisted of teams mostly from Texas, but occasionally from Oklahoma and Arkansas. It eventually merged with the Big 8 to form the Big 12. And that's about as far as I'm going to go into this. I just wanted to give a very brief overview of what happened. It eventually collapsed and became, or at least some of the schools in it became the Big 12, along with the schools from the Big 8. Now, the University of the Pacific was founded in 1851, started playing football in 1895, and yeah, it's kind of a really cool story, and it's something that you're just not going to see in any other video game. So it is located near San Francisco. They played football from 1895 to 1995, and then the school disbanded its program as a cost-saving measure. This is the only video game that this school really exists in, or at least its football team exists in, which was so cool to find out. I mean, they're not any good in the game, but still, it was really cool to see them in here. Going over even the brief history of the Southwest Conference and the University of the Pacific, that sent me down a rabbit hole of college athletics history. That's been a lot of fun to go through, and I just wanted to mention it here as I'm going over these two video games. So let's get back to College Football USA 96. This game was released in 1995, which is something that I hate about sports games. It's a minor annoyance, but it is there. It just makes keeping track of what's in them a little bit of a hassle. This game features 108 college football teams, which represent all of the major teams in college football at the time. According to Google's Garbage AI, there were 107 college football teams at this time, but it's Google's Garbage AI, so I wouldn't really trust that. I'd rather, do anything than listen to what Google's stupid AI has to say. College football is divided into two divisions at this time. I find it rather confusing. You have 1A and then 1AA. My hat's off to all the people that study this and have committed it to memory. I watch about 10 games a year, which is why I'm discussing video games instead of, the actual sport. There are several improvements in this game over the previous games. Mostly there are more features added to it, there are more plays that you can call, and it's more of a comprehensive game. But I still prefer Bill Walsh 95 over this one. It's really just a matter of personal preference. College Football USA 1997 was released in 1996. At this time, it includes all 111 Division I AA teams. You can also create a playoff tournament, which is something that works so much better than the BCS system used to. Both 96 and 97 have similar features, so let's go over some of them. You can play a complete season with the bowl games and or a tournament. You just need to select that in the settings. The game has injuries and penalties in it. You can do substitutions. All of the major and mid-major conferences for the time are in the game. With 1997 only, you could create a player. You can have a custom schedule. There's tiebreaker mode, and then there are 2 difficulty settings. Those are all unique to 1997, whereas 96 just gave you the first few things that I had mentioned. These 2 games are both pretty good. The only thing that was really lost from the series was the Bill Walsh license, mostly because the coach had retired. This still feels a little odd to me, but at the end of the day, if he didn't want to put his name on it, then who am I to judge? Both of these games and the 2 Bill Walsh games are still pretty fun to play. They're definitely not as good as what you have today, but going back and looking at them, you can definitely see how far EA has come. I really enjoyed learning more about college football through this little experience that I did. These games captured something really interesting about the sport's history. While it can be a little annoying to see an updated game released every year for something like this, they've unintentionally captured a version of sports history. These games didn't have everything you would expect from college football, but they did track the evolution of the game of football. As the offenses and defenses changed, the video games had to change along with them. And with college football, they had to track the teams that were moving up and down from the different divisions and how they changed conferences, how the conferences would go away, merge with each other. All of that is pretty much tracked in these college football games, with the exception of the 10-year gap from NCAA 14 up until college football 2025. These can be very useful to see just how the NCAA has changed. These 4 early games capture the old bowl system when nobody knew who the real national champion was. This was a messy period before the BCS, which was also a messy period, but not as messy as it was before, where you had 2 or more teams that could just claim a national champion, and no one would really be able to dispute that. It's kind of interesting to see stuff like that happen, especially when you go back and you look at the history of the national champion for football, and you'll see sometimes 3 or 4 schools all claiming to be the national champion for that year, or years when they just didn't bother to do it. It's very interesting. It can also be fun to see how the video games have allowed players to, make changes to the game when the NCAA just drug their feet on it. Like a playoff system, you could do that as early as 1996, and it took the NCAA decades to figure the thing out, just sticking with the same cryptic bowl system. Say what you want about the EA Sports games, they managed to capture something fascinating about sports, and how they gradually changed over the years, and how they tended to give players something that they wanted, but not everything. These games mark the beginning of EA's college football series. It took a few twists and turns at the beginning, as the company just tried to find their footing and tried to figure out how to market these. Looking at all their franchises, Madden kind of stands out as the only one that managed to keep its branding consistent throughout the years. I love going back and looking at just how the information on these games has been recorded. EA is particularly strange, just because they have a lot of one-off sports games at the very beginning, especially in basketball, and then they've got weird stuff like Madden, which stayed pretty much the same throughout the years. And then their NCAA games, which, say what you want about how they were able to get the licenses and whether or not it was good for the players. They managed to put them out for a while, and then they managed to bring them back. So that's at least something good, because I prefer the college football games over the pro ones. There are other college football series. Sega had their games, but there's also a few just one-off college football games out there that I'm eventually going to get to. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what those have to offer and how they differ from what EA was able to do. Anyway, that's going to wrap things up. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I will talk to you all later. Bye.